All right, my name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn, and with me today is also Tanya Fincham, and we're with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program with the OSU Library. Today is Thursday, September 30th, 2010, and we're in Crescent, Oklahoma, interviewing Frances and Phil Macy on the Alfred and Joella Murry Homestead. This interview is being conducted as part of the Oklahoma Centennial Farm Families Oral History Project. And Phil, you wanted to tell us a little story today.
Okay, I'll be happy to. If you all can go back to 1893, that way I can best give you a story about this farm. My great grandpa and grandma lived on the farm next door, and their name was James and Mariah Murry. My grandpa's name is Alfred Murry. He was about 21 in 1893, and the first run in Oklahoma was 1889 near Guthrie. The next big run, there was about 4 or 5 little runs, but the next big run was called the Cherokee Strip Run, and that's where people lined up on the Kansas border, and they shot the gun, and they all started south with their flags. And my grandpa was about 21, Alfred Murry. And he has a horse, and so he leaves home here where his mom and dad lives across the fence over here. And he goes up to the Kansas border, and when they shoot the gun, he takes off, heading south. He gets about as far as Billings, Oklahoma, which is near Enid. Now, these are towns' current names. I'm sure they weren't there then, but that lets you know where I'm talking about. He gets as far as about Billings, and he puts his stake in the ground on 160 acres. And the year is 1893. I think it was President Cleveland back then had the proclamation that if you went out and homesteaded and put a stake in the ground and stayed there for 7 years, lived there and turned 10 acres, at the end of 7 years, for $12 or $14, you were given that 160 acres. So Grandpa put his stake in the ground, dug him a dugout to live in, and he lived there by himself for 7 years. Mm. That brings us up to 1900. In October 1900, he's now been there 7 years. And so he goes to the land office, and you have to have a piece of paper signed by 5 or 7 other existing Americans that live in that area that vouch for you, that says you're an honorable and honest person. We have that piece of paper today. We got it out of the records. And so there were 5 or 7 people that said, hey, Alfred Murry, he's A-OK. So he got that farm that day in October 1900. That's 7 years after he put his stake in the ground. Approximately the next day, he sold that farm for, I think, either $1,200 or $2,100. He gets on his horse and rides from Billings down to where his mom and dad lives next door. And he buys this farm where we're sitting, and half of this house was a part of the farm. He built the back half. And I think he bought this place for somewhere between $1,200 and $2,100. His wife, my grandmother, was Joella Brown, and she lived 1 mile west over here in the farmhouse with her family. So he begins to court her, and they get married the next year, and they have 3 children that are born in this house. Uncle Bill was born in 1902, and my mother was born in 1904, and my aunt was born in 1910, and then another aunt was born in town when they moved to town years later. So that gets us to this house. When he bought it, the large part of the house, the front part of the house was here, and he added these 2 back rooms. When we get inside, I'll They'll be able to explain that to you better. Let's see. Whenever let's see, they got married in about 1902, so they moved here, and as the years pass, he gets as a young man he gets serious rheumatism, and he has trouble of living out here on the farm and the weather, and so they moved to town, and so as the years passed, this farm then got occupied by the third child, which was Aunt Pete. Her name was Velma, and she got married in 1830, and she and her husband, Uncle Russell Wilson, moved here, and they lived here then for the next 40 some odd years. Mm-hmm. So my mom moved to town, and that's another story, not a part of this story. And so my aunt and uncle, that is Velma and Russell Wilson, did not have any children. So I was their surrogate little guy. And so as the years passed, I'd come out here and stay at the farm with them in the summertime, harvest time, and etc. And so what I need to do is take you inside and start telling you stuff about inside the house. Frances, have I left something out?
Well, you could, we could tell them that across the road where the Milo is now, there was like a village, and there were a number of houses that went from here down to the corner. And down at the corner, there was like a little grocery store, and a post office was there called Acton.
Actonville.
Did the Acton share that with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actonville
and
Village.
A blacksmith shop. And
the church was around the corner.
Yeah, right. Dunkard
Church.
Right. And Phil's been there.
My mother, when she was a little girl, she used to go to that church with Grandma and Grandpa, and they'd have feet washings. Are you familiar with that term at all?
I am not. Could you explain it?
Feet washings. Well, way back in Jesus' day, as Christians, people traveled, and they usually wore sandals back in those years. And so the story goes back then, as in the evening time when they came in to finish their day of traveling or wherever they'd been, they always washed their feet. And there's a story about how, I believe it was Mary, in washing his feet, she took her long hair, she had long hair, and she dried his feet off with her long hair and used some perfume and stuff. So anyway, back in the early years before Christianity, in Jesus' day, that I think was a somewhat normal procedure in those years. Well, some of the churches, as the years passed, picked that up, and this little Dunkard church over here, my mom said, used to have feet washings, and in those days, of course, Jesus is not involved, but the people, would, I don't know their procedure, but they'd come up and take their shoes and socks off and go through the procedure as a part of a ritual of early Christian life. So that's that story.
I think she called it foot washing.
Foot washing?
Foot washing. Mm-hmm. But there is a cemetery over there where that old church used to be that is still used.
That Mount Hope?
Still,
Mount Hope.
It's pretty well kept, and there are people that are buried there frequently now.
When I was a real young guy, they had pie suppers and box suppers over there, and I have been over there, and I've bought a box a time or two for a quarter or a nickel or a dime or whatever you bid. It was an auction, and so I can remember that kind of activity also. All right, I need to get inside here because there's a lot more stories.
Well, before we go in, can we share a little bit about the yard while we're out here?
Well, sure. Let me ask a quick question about Alfred.
Good. Yeah.
Why did he sell the farm in Billings?
Okay. My opinion. I don't have anybody to contradict me. My opinion is that he wanted this farm. He was 21 when he went up there, so 7 years. He's 28. So he's saying, I want to go get that farm next door to where his mom and dad lived. So he sold that so he could buy this farm. And so that is my answer to that question.
I think another reason is through the years we have discovered that this is a very fertile farm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was good at, he was very, so I was going to share with you, he was very good in agronomy. He wasn't educated, but he was excellent. The things that he had around here were so far advanced of what anybody else ever had. That's the original smokehouse. And on the other side of that, he had a coal frame. And he raised plants in the springtime. And all the people from all the community would come and get their cabbage and their tomatoes. And he was so far advanced that he had a huge orchard, a large orchard.
A little grape vineyard here.
Yes, and hops. He grew hops. And then they used the cellar, you see, to preserve the things that he learned how to grow here. But this was a very fertile, and it still is.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very fertile piece of land. It's, I guess it was, 160 acres when he first got it, and then he got the other.
I haven't told that story yet.
Right.
I'll tell him that.
Okay, but I think that he knew that this was a better farm, that the kind of farming that he wanted to do, because that's pretty wheat field up that way, it's more flat and prairie.
Do you have any sense how Alfred learned how to be such a good farmer and industrious farmer?
We really don't.
I wish we could tell you.
We
We do not know that part. I need to tell you a little bit more about him. That'll explain to you why I'm not going to be able to tell you very much about Alfred.
Okay.
I told you about his arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
At the age of 49, that's very young, he had already had 10 years of bad, in the wintertime, he'd have pain. And have either of you ever been to Hot Springs, Arkansas? Are you familiar with that place? Well, back in those years, and even for the next 30 or 40 years, clear up until maybe 1950, that was a big place for people who had ailments to go and take baths. That's in Hot Springs, Arkansas. In Claremore, Oklahoma, there was also a hot springs. I don't know whether you knew that or not.
Mm-hmm.
And they did the same thing, like a mini Hot Springs, Arkansas, in Claremore, Oklahoma, Will Rogers country. And so Grandpa would get on the train here in Crescent, and he'd ride the train to Claremore and take these hot baths because supposedly that would improve your pain. And while he was there, he died, 49 years old. So therefore then, that would have been 1922. So I was born in 1930. So all my stories about Grandpa is what Grandma told me.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandma is Joella. And so I need to share with you that I don't know a lot about how he got to where he got to.
So did Joella handle the day-to-day farm duties after Alfred passed on?
Okay, all right, that's a good question. By the time he passed on, they had moved to town in Crescent. So the farm was then rented to people until my aunt and uncle moved here in 1930. So therefore, they weren't at the farm, and she was raising the family in Crescent. And so when he was gone, she was the keeper of her kids. My mother would have been 1922. My mother was born in 1904, so she would have been 18. Oh, by the way, I'll tell you a quick story about my mom. She graduated from high school in Crescent in about 21 or 22, about the year that Grandpa died. She went there was a little college in Edmond, Oklahoma called Normal. And it was a little 2-year teacher's college. It's now University of Central Oklahoma. But anyway, so she goes over there for a summer course, gets a stamp of approval, and she started teaching school when she was 17, out here in a one-room school.
For students for the same age as she was.
And she had two boys in her class that was in the 8th grade that were as old as she was. And so anyway, how'd I get on her story? You were asking me about Grandma.
How they lived. Well,
you asked me about Grandma. So Grandma's at home in Crescent, and my mother is 18, so she's teaching school, so she comes and helps Grandma with finances and etc. And then Grandma has 2 other kids. Aunt Pete, who's born in 1910, so she would have only been 10 or 11 years old, and then Aunt Tootie, which her name was Mary Frances. I think she was born in 1916, so she would have only been 3 or 4 or 5 years old. So Grandma had 2 little kids in the house. My mother, who's 18, and her brother, who's 19, and he goes. That's Uncle Bill, and he goes and leaves home and works in the oil field. So he's gone. So my mom is kind of a big helper with Joella. Joella's grandma.
Okay.
So I
But
think
they lived very frugally.
Oh,
She
Grandma!
even had a garden in town, you know.
Grandma had a garden in town. She canned, and she had a cellar. Like there's a cellar here, and this cellar is 120 years old. Sitting right there behind you, and it's still a good cellar. I'll show it to you later. And so Grandma took care of herself there in town and raised these 2 kids. And
Until Aunt Pete and Uncle Russell got married. Aunt Pete didn't want to go to school, to college.
Mm-hmm.
So she and Aunt Pete and Uncle Russell got married.
1930.
And Uncle Russell came from the farm, big farming family, and they moved here. And they lived here.
About 40-some years.
And they would take, from here, they'd take chickens into Joella and, you know,
Eggs
any
and
vegetables. And
Pint
pork.
of whipped cream, a pint of cream into, and I think they paid Grandma a little bit of rent. But they helped her with food products.
But he farmed with horses, and the 2 of them together milked cows in that barn. And in this smokehouse was the cream separator that you.
Behind you is the barn. I'll show that to you later when we start taking a tour. And they milked 18 cows a day, twice a day.
Wow.
Uncle Russell and Aunt hand milked them, and then they'd bring the milk up here to this little smokehouse that also had a separator inside, and they would separate, and then their cash product was the cream. And every 2 days, the creamery truck would come down the road, and they'd give them a 30-gallon bucket of cream, and that was their cash, except when they had wheat, and then they get cash from wheat. And then the residue, then you'd slop the pigs and feed the calves with the blue john.
So very self-sufficient.
Yes. Very, extremely.
And I guess during the Depression years, you know, it was a little bit easier because they had.
Oh yeah, no, nobody else had anything, so you didn't know that things were poor.
No electricity. No electricity. Now, they did have a telephone. That's amazing. They had a country telephone.
My grandpa had the first, Alfred, he had the first telephone out in this area, and the neighbors would get on their horse and they would ride over here to use
call the
Grandpa's
doctor.
telephone, and they'd hold the telephone like this and they'd holler in there because hey Jim, and you'd get like they'd have two shorts and one long would be their ring.
But everybody listened.
Oh yeah, everybody listened on the telephone, but Grandpa had the first telephone in this area. Out here, I mean, they had them in town, and I don't know what year they would have been, but I'm going to guess it would have been like 1910 or something like that.
Well, when did electricity come to the farm?
After World War II.
Oklahoma was.
It was called
Did you grow
rural
up in
electrical.
Oklahoma?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Oklahoma was the last state to get
After
rural
World
electricity.
War II, which we're talking about, what, 46, 47, 48, the rural electrification system came into America, and it's certainly here in Oklahoma.
Well, they all had it in the East long,
And
long
that's
before
when
we did.
So when I was a little boy coming here in the 30s, there was no electricity.
Coal oil
So
lamps.
we had coal oil lamp, and you're going to ask me these questions, so I'll tell you that now about the stoves.
Mm-hmm.
This house was heated with a black belly stove that set in the front room, and I'll show you that when we go inside. And in the kitchen, there was 2 kinds of stoves. There was a summer stove that ran on
coal
oil, and in the wintertime, it used wood. So my aunt and grandma, in the earlier days, before my time, I'm talking about now the teens, this little wooden stove, you'd put wood in it, and you cooked and heated the kitchen part of the house with a wood stove in the wintertime. And when spring came, you'd take the black belly stove out of the living room. You just take it out of the house.
Put it in the
Just
barn.
sit in the barn. And you take the coal oil stove out, I'm sorry, you would take the wood burning stove out and put in a coal oil stove, because the coal oil stove, you can control the heat right at the stove and not necessarily heating up the house with it. And then when October came, like about now, out would go the coal oil stove, in would come the wood burning stove in the kitchen, and in would come the black belly stove, goes into the front room. And so when I grew up as a kid, that's what was here, because there wasn't any electricity and there wasn't any other kinds of power.
So when you spent the night, how would you keep warm?
A lot of quilts.
That's the answer. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Or a rock that you'd warm, or brick that
You
you'd
could
warm
do
and put at
that.
your
You
feet.
could take a
That's
brick
how
and
I
heat
did.
it up and put a towel around it and put it in the foot of the bed, kind of. But and I wouldn't hear a lot in the wintertime. Usually I was here in the summertime when I was a kid. See, I was born in 1930, so all through the 30s, I probably was 6 or 7 years old before I came here and stayed many days. Otherwise, it'd just be a night as a little guy. And as the years passed, then I would come when harvest time would be, and I'd help take water out the field. And when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I was pitching bundles and actually working with the harvest hands. Now, I wasn't as strong as the full-time men were, but I would help in the fields, not a lot, but some.
This well was here when Phil's mother was a little girl, and it was called a pitcher pump then. She thought it stood up on something because it was a little pump like that one right there, and you'd put your bucket there and run in the house with your water for the house. She also told us when we first got here, we didn't know that these rocks were here. Those rocks over there were brought up by his grandpa, Alfred, from the creek, so we could get to the smokehouse without walking in the mud or in the snow.
You'll see
they
those
just
when
would
you
go
get
by.
out and walk around. They're
But
big,
Mom,
big.
they insisted that there was rocks that went out through an arbor that was right here, like that arbor down there. We found one that was like the one that Alfred had made an arbor. Here, he was very clever with making things. He'd made toys, a merry-go-round for the kids to play on. But anyway, she insisted that these rocks were here, and I'll be darned, we kept digging down, and we found these, 12 inches down?
Yeah.
Wow.
And there they were, just like she said they were. So anyway, we kept them. We pulled them up and put dirt under them and
Now,
used them.
Okay, now she's telling you about this well.
Mm-hmm.
Behind you, right back over there, was another well that I think Grandpa or his predecessor that was here had dug down, and it was like a well that would have been
Big.
3-4 feet around with rocks, and you can stand and look down in, look in it, and at the top would be a little cupola like this with a wheel and a rope on it, and you had a bucket, and you drop the bucket down in the well, and the bucket would pick up water out of the well, and then you'd pull the bucket up and pour it into another bucket and take it down. So that well was there also back before this one.
It's under the tub. It's covered. There is the opening. It's still
There's
there.
back there now behind you. You'll see it when you go back
And
there.
we understand there was another well out by the barn somewhere, but we have never found where that is. So, but Phil's
Well,
mother
there was
was
a
sure
there was
that
a windmill out there back in the teens, 20s, and 30s. So there was a windmill out there near the barn, of which the windmill could bring the water up for the trough for the animals. Animals out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of them, and we're not sure whether it was Uncle Russell or Grandpa that built. There's a wonderful. You're going to get to ride out to the pond and see the pond. And then there is another one over on the other one that is a beautiful. It's a lake.
I
It's
need
beautiful.
to tell her about that right now.
Go ahead.
We said 1900. This farm became the Murry Farm Homestead. In 1910, there's an offsetting 160 right behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Quarter section is northeast, southwest. This is the southwest quarter section of section 34. The northeast quarter is offsetting this one, so they sit like this. So Grandpa in 1910 bought that other 160 acres. So this farm now is 320 acres. And my mother, I don't know how much story you want to hear. I'll tell you. I'll tell you this story. This is an interesting story. I told you, you know all the kids. So as the years pass, Uncle Bill dies at 49, like his daddy did.
Wow.
And so his wife, and Adelaide, she wasn't all that excited about the Murry family. That's her kinfolks, right? So she says to Joella, "I want out. I want out. I want my inheritance now." Well, the inheritance basically was this farm, these two farms. So Grandma and my mother and the other two sisters, one of them is living here now, Aunt Pete and her husband. They get some estimates, and they give her an estimate of which her inheritance would be 1/5. There's Grandma and 4 kids, and her husband was one of them. He's died. He has just died. So that means she wants 1/5 of the assets, which is the 2 farms. She rejected the dollar figure they came up with. I haven't any idea what it is, but I'm just going to guess $4, $5, $6, $7,000, maybe that much. In 1950, I guess it is, about 1950. So she forces them to sell the farms on the courthouse steps. The courthouse is in Guthrie. So my mother and Grandma, who's Joella, and Tootie, who's Mary Frances, and Aunt Pete and her husband, who live in this house, they get together and they say, "Okay, we will go to the auction and we'll buy the farm. Whatever the bid, there's not going to be any big bids, they don't think, but we'll buy the farm. And so all we got to come up with is 1/5 of what the price is to buy her out." So Uncle Russell, who's married to Aunt Pete and they live here, he makes a deal with all of them because Grandma's still alive. He makes a deal with them and he says, "Okay, I'll pay whatever the 1/5 comes up to. I'll pay that, and therefore then I'm now one of the 5 owners." And at the time they did that, my mother, who was the eldest of the siblings, said, "Okay, what we need to do right now, because Grandma, the year's 1950, and Grandma's getting up in age, so we need to kind of identify how's this farm going to get divided when Grandma dies." So what they did was, there's 4. Grandma would be the 5th, but when she dies, it'd be 4. So they sit down and calculated how to do a 1/4 ownership of the 2 farms, the 320 acres. Because Aunt Pete and Uncle Russell were living in this house on the home place, the original place, Mom and the other 2 sisters said, no, it's only one other sister. One other sister, because the other sister lives with Uncle Russell. They say, "We're going to now state you all get the home place." Uncle Russell's got 1/2 of it. That's 160 acres, right, in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So Aunt Pete is an owner of half of it because of her bloodline, and Uncle Russell's going to pay that 1/5 I was telling you about. So he then gets the other half. So 80 is Aunt Pete's, 80 acres is Uncle Russell's. My mother gets 80 acres of the other 160, the offset, and the other sister, who's Tootie, Aunt Tootie, she gets the other 80 acres. So mom's identification is the south half of that one, and Tootie's is the north half. And Uncle Russell and Aunt Pete get the home place. Now, not right now. It's when Grandma dies, but they identified it and put it in all the paperwork. They got paperwork here anyway. Okay, so 8 years pass, and Grandma dies. Well, whenever she dies, then now these papers all get put in the county courthouse records. And so now officially now, Uncle Russell and Aunt Pete own a home place. Mom and her sister own the other 160. And each 4th of July, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and etc., we always got together. The families did. Those of us still around. And so as the year passed, the next year, Uncle Russell, every time they got together, would say to Tootie is the youngest sister. She's the one that owns the north half of that 160 over there. He would say to her, Tootie, when you going to sell me your half of the farm? Your half of your farm. He never did say anything to my mom, because I think he said, I'm not, May's not going to, my mother's name was May. She's not even going to entertain me talking to her. And he'd make Tootie mad. Well, this went on for a year or two, every holiday, every time they get together. Tootie, when are you going to sell me that farm? Well, Tootie got mad at Uncle Russell because he was bugging her. She says to my mother one day after a couple of years of this going on, she says to my mother, she says, I want to sell you my half. I'm tired of him bugging me about the farm. So my mom gives her $2,500 for her half. So now my mom owns all that 160. She takes that $2,500 and buys 100 shares of AT&T stock way back 40, 50 years ago. It's probably worth $100,000 today. But anyway, Mom then owned the farm. And that, I think, is an interesting story about how that, and then my mother, who died last year, 104. When she died, then my sister and I now own that 160 over there. So, I own the south half, and she, it's undivided. So she and I own that one, and Frances and I, 30-some years ago, bought the home place from Aunt Pete and Uncle Russell because it became theirs when Grandma died. Mm-hmm. And so that's a little bit of story about how does Phil and Frances end up owning the Murry homestead that we got sitting here. That's kind of an interesting little story.
Oh, yeah.
So what did the sister finally get for her fifth on the courthouse steps?
I do not know the number. I am going to guess probably $4,000 or $5,000, because I doubt if these two farms in 1950 sold for much more than, let's see, $100 an acre back then would have been 16,000, and so 1/5 of 16 would have been 3,000. So maybe I'm going to guess maybe $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 at the most, but that would have been a lot of money in 1950. You could buy a new car for $2,000, So, so that's about what she got. And I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you another little story. Royalty. You all should be interested in royalty. The royalty. God, this is the craziest story in the world. The royalty. She got cash for her surface, and she got her 1/5 of the royalty with a 30-year termination. That was 1950, so by 1980, she's out of it. And that reverts back to the homeowner. Well, 1980, we bought the farm. But Aunt Pete and Uncle Russell, they kept their royalty for life. So they died 5 or 7 or 8 years later. So then the royalty then goes to, it's ours. We're talking about the home place. The 160 that's over there, my mom and her sister sold royalty to one another, so each of them has half of half of half of half. It's a crazy. Oh, I got all that paperwork. It is the craziest thing in the world. So anyway, they also had the 30-year deal. So, and that was back in 1960. So by 1990, that vanished, and because Mom owned the farm, then the royalty was hers, and so now it's my sister and I on that piece of land over there, and Frances and I have all of the home place. And so crazy stories.
Did they find any oil, gas?
Okay, yes. The answer is yes. 2 or 3 or no, 10 years. It was 10 years ago. No. Yeah, it was the first one. 10 years ago, they drilled a well right over here on our farm, and it produced for 60 days. And the guy that drilled it, he wanted to rework it, and so he went in to rework it and dropped the tools in the hole and killed the well.
Oh man!
I'm glad we can laugh about it, you know.
Yeah, now that was 10 years ago. 3 years ago, some other guys came in, and they drilled a well over there too, in the same area, and they were doing some great stuff. They went down and they did horizontal drilling. Are you familiar with that term?
I am not.
It's a big deal.
You don't want to hear about it.
You go down 7,000 or 8,000 feet, and then you turn and you go parallel to the surface, another 2,000 feet.
Huh.
And that way you can produce that much more sand out of one hole.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this is going to be a big deal. Boy, they were going to get 50 to 100 barrel oil a day and out of the Mississippi.
Thank goodness Phil and I said we're not going to count our chicks until they're hatched.
Well, the biggest fracking is where you go down in a hole and you pressurize the formation and you explode it out so that it'll produce the oil and gas. The biggest frack job that had been done at this time in this area was done on this well. I mean, there was 26 Halliburton trucks over there. I mean, the whole county was.
We had people driving by looking to see what in the world they were doing.
And
It was like a circus.
Normal fracking is done at 3,000 psi, and this was done at 6,000 psi. Big deal. And I'm not ever sure they even got in the right hole. Because they had two parallel holes down there. They had 2 of these horizontal holes. I was there every day watching all this, thinking, oh boy, golly, we can buy a new car, Frances. So now we get a check every once in a while for $50. So.
Well, through the years, was farming the primary source of
Yes.
Only
income?
source.
Only?
So
I shouldn't say only.
nobody had an outside job?
Well,
Now wait a minute.
Uncle Russell, at the end of their life here on the farm, he actually worked for they called it working on the road,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and he drove a grader.
Okay.
But that's when they moved to town and retired.
But he did that a little while he was here because that's when he found that doll. But anyway, he did that in order to build up some Social Security time, you know, so he could have.
Now that's Uncle
But
Russell.
that's at the end of his life, you know.
Mhm.
My goodness, that's
But go back to Alfred.
never anything.
Alfred, when they moved to town, Alfred worked at the hardware store.
Okay.
He still owned the farms, and and so they rented it out for whatever token it was. But he worked in the hardware store in town. Joella, who's grandma, she had a brother that was very industrious. Bill Brown was his name, William Brown. And he was in the grocery business, so he was a entrepreneur of those years. I'm talking about now 1900, 1904. In fact, if you go to Crescent, there's a building that the drugstore is in, and you'll see Brown. You'll see his name up there, and he built that building back in about, I think it says 1904. I'm not sure. It might be 1908 or something about that time. So Grandpa was worker in town, just in the
Well,
hardware
that's
store.
what I was going to add about when you asked the question about why did he come here.
Mhm.
Crescent was a very unusually vibrant little community at that time. They had big orchards, and they would ship peaches out on trains. I mean, they really were this whole area was very fertile, and lots of agriculture and lots of products that got shipped out. And I think he knew that, 4 miles away was a little town that was pretty good. And then the county seat was Guthrie.
Mhm.
And Phil's mother has told us how many times the whole family would get in the wagon with the horses, and they would wagon all the way to Guthrie, spend the day.
About
She'd
10
get to
miles.
ride on the interurban, and they'd put the horses in the
Stables,
over there for the day, and then come back.
buy
at
their
night.
groceries, do their shopping, and come back that night.
And he'd put hay in the wagon so they could fall asleep on the way
Oh.
with quilts and
Have you ever been to Guthrie?
Mhm.
Well, there's a restaurant there in town called Staples.
Mhm.
stables.
Stables, not Staples. Stables, and that was where they used to put their wagon and their horses when they went to town to Guthrie. And we're talking about in the
Oh,
teens,
my
before
the 20s.
before 1910. Yeah, before 1920, when they were all living here on the farm then.
Did they when did they purchase their first car?
Ma May
Boy,
was the
howdy! Let's
first woman in Crescent to own her own
Oklahoma.
car when she was teaching school.
Wow.
She went in and negotiated and bought her own car.
go. Brand new
First
car,
woman.
and she was 19 years old.
Wow.
I mean, she was a liber. She was a women's liber before they knew how to pronounce it. She was a neat lady. That's my mother, May. She got a car, and the year would have been 24, 23 or 24. She bought a new Model T, I believe. I think it was $360 or something.
So she's teaching school, May.
Yes, May's teaching school.
How did she meet her husband? Tell me about the husband, your dad.
Okay, the Macy. We get to the Macys for a minute. My dad came here from Missouri with his family, and there were 10 kids. They lived in Panhandle. He was born in Beaver County,
Mhm.
Oklahoma, Beaver. And his daddy was what you called in the earlier days a shade tree mechanic. He had the Red Ball Express mechanic store in Blackwell. And we are talking about Dad was born in 1900. So we're talking about 1915 and 1920. And he comes to Crescent, my dad does. He comes to Crescent, I'm going to guess, around 1921 or 22 or 23, and opens a little automobile repair shop with another guy. And so my mother met him there in Crescent, and they got married in 1920. He was born 26, about 1920. So they courted there, and she was teaching school at the time, and so they met there, and he had this little automobile dealership.
Can I add a little
Yeah.
bit to that? I don't know if you've seen the Cimarron River or not, but it has pretty sandy beaches on the edge of the river. Well, the young people around here in those days, and even later, would go to the Cimarron River and have picnics and cook. They would they'd have hot biscuits and fried potatoes and, take maybe fried chicken with them and have
Kodaking.
picnics. And they'd take their Kodaks.
Kodaking. It's called
We've got
Kodaking.
so many pictures of Kodak parties.
Huh.
And they'd always stand on the bridge, and then somebody take their picture standing on the bridge.
So we've got a lot of old pictures with my mom and dad and other young
that was
couples.
what young people did, and they weren't dating necessarily. Just a bunch of them would go and hanging out together.
I don't know a lot more about their courtship other than they got married around 27, and my sister was born 29. I was born 30. And my dad ended up when 30, 31. What year did the banks close? 30, somewhere in 31 or 32, the banks closed in America. And my dad had borrowed $500 or so to buy a new car to put on the showroom floor. And when the banks closed, he was very frugal. And when the banks closed, I don't know how long they were closed, days, weeks, months, I'm not sure how long. But when they reopened, if you had a loan, you could buy your loan for 50 cents on the dollar.
Huh.
And he was able to buy his loan out and get back free. And then for the next 10 years, we're talking about from 1931, 32 until World War II, my mother and my dad, all of their money was in cash. And he did bank at the bank, but their real money went in the refrigerator, in the icebox, in the kitchen. And I remember as a kid, they could easily have had hundreds of dollars in there in $5 and $10 bills, because in the refrigerator, if your house burned down, refrigerator is insulated and your money wouldn't burn up. I remember in 1936, my dad, we're off the subject of the farm here for a minute, but my dad bought our first house, only house, for I think it was $400 or $700. So we're talking about 1936. And so therefore, to have saved tens and twenties and fives in your refrigerator, if you had $500 or $1,000, you had a lot of money in the refrigerator. I mean, and so we were cash and carry all my life, and I'm that way today. I mean, I borrowed to buy a house, but that's it. We've never borrowed to buy anything else. We're very, very conservative and very frugal. And
You still keep a stash in your refrigerator?
are you ready?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
That's great.
Learned that from my mom and dad.
In a special container or just?
No, I'll tell you. You all have a refrigerator that's probably got a freezing unit in it, the upper half or somewhere. The freezing unit is really insulated. And so if your house burned down and everything is gone, you'd walk in there and that refrigerator would still be standing there. It'd be left, and that's where you put your money, in the freezer. And in fact, in 2008, that wasn't very long ago, 2 years ago, things look pretty serious in America.
Uh-huh.
It's still serious. We're still in big trouble. Our government is hard. We got a corrupt government. But anyway, we put some extra money in the refrigerator in 2008. Not a big deal, but you know, if all of a sudden the banks were to close and everybody's frantically running around, if you had $1,000, you could be wealthy. You know, I mean, you could have been. So anyway, answer is yes, we still do. Funny little story, isn't it? Do you all ever listen to Dave? Dave. He's got a radio show about how to manage your money. What's his name? Dave from Nashville, Tennessee. You don't know him?
No, sir.
Oh, he says that that the paid up mortgage replaced the BMW in the driveway. You know, and he says, okay. Anyway, how did I get on his subject?
Well,
Go ahead, ask a question.
going back to the farm,
Okay, get back to the farm. Yeah.
tell me a little bit about preservation on the land through the years, to the different structures.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Obviously, they all look in really good shape.
Yeah. I'll do the best I can on that. Through the years, Frances and I bought the farm 30 years ago. So therefore, we have rented it to a farmer.
Well, we lived in
He's a
St.
big
Louis.
farmer over in Mulhall. He's got 1,000 acres over there. And so He maintains our farm for us, and the farm is terraced. This wheat field out here is 50 some acres, and every so many years, in fact, he just did it last year, he redoes the terraces with special equipment. And the terraces, of course, is to control the rain runoff. Are you familiar with how terraces work?
A little bit.
Well, if you can imagine, if you just have a hillside like this, and you have done nothing to it, and big heavy rains come, they will begin to wash. And when they wash, then they start taking the surface land with them. And first thing you know, well, if you terrace that in circles, then when the big heavy rains come, instead of it washing, it'll only wash as far as that terrace goes, and then you end up with, I'll just call it a little lake. So you've got 20 little lakes. Every terrace creates a little lake, but it holds it. It doesn't run. And then 2 days later, when the rain stopped, you still got your land. It hadn't washed away. So right now, you might not be able to tell it, but that 63 acres there has probably got at least a half a dozen major terraces. We're talking about big swings. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 feet long. Big, and they're big semicircles like this. So this land is all terraced. I'm talking about the farmland.
Mm-hmm.
There's 10 acres out behind the barn, and it has a little terrace in it. It's only 10 acres. But the rest of the farm is all pasture. The pasture, unfortunately, is not terraced. Therefore, then, when the rains come hard, we do have a few canyons. And when we go for a ride, I'll get you in the gator, and we'll go out to the farm, to the pond over there. But I'll show you where there is major erosion, but it's hundreds of years old out in the pastures. I mean, now one year, 15, 18 years ago, Frances and I spent a lot of money, and one pasture over there had eroded bad enough I didn't like it. There's gullies here and gullies here and gullies there. And so we can that little acreage over there was probably 40 acres. And we got a bulldozer and came in and completely planed it. Mm-hmm. So all the gullies are full, and everything was planed on an angle like this. And then we built a pond down at the bottom of it, so that hopefully when it rains, the water would run down to the pond, and then the pond had a horn in the bottom of it that would take it down to the creek and then take it away. And in general, that was done, we did that 15, 20 years ago. In general, that's been a major protection of the pasture. And I'll be able to show you that.
We bought the house, as he said, 30 years ago, but we lived in St. Louis. Phil worked for McDonnell Douglas, and I taught school. And nobody was in this house. It was occupied by birds and rats and some meth producers.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Hole in the roof.
There were some druggies that got in there.
But we did keep the roof on it.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of it, we just couldn't keep up with it being so far away. And so after we retired and moved here, that's when we started,
bringing it back
to life.
So you've done major restoration on
when we
it.
get inside, we're going to show you. We're going to show you.
Plus, even the foundation, we found an old man he lives south of Crescent. Wonderful.
Should I tell her that story?
Go ahead.
Frances wanted to rehab the house. In a minute, we'll show you the pictures of the house. It was just shambles. It was just trash. The windows were rotted out. The doors were rotted out. The floors was rotted out. It was just. We'll show you pictures. It was just a pile of junk. She wanted to restore it, and I said, "I'm not going to do that."
Naysayer.
And so finally, she kept bugging me, and I said, "Tell you what, I'm going to get this old man that she was getting ready to tell you about. I'm going to get this old man. He's a famous, not brick man, but masonry guy, stone man." So he comes out. By the way, he's got a beard this long.
He looks like Santa Claus.
And he looks like
a
Rip
troll.
Van Winkle.
A troll.
A troll, yeah. His beard is this long, and his hair is this long.
And he wears a pointed.
Interesting old guy. Anyway, so he comes out, and I said, "Okay, look at this." I said, "My wife wants to bring the house back to life, but I'm not going to do anything with this foundation. The foundation was made of sand rock, pieces of sand rock. So here's a little piece, and here's a little piece, and here's a bigger piece, and they just, I'm talking about the guy that built it originally back in probably 1890. And now I'm only talking about that half there. My grandpa built this half. So I say to this old guy, what do you think about that foundation? And he says, I'll tell you what I'll do. For $500, I'll dig a ditch 1 foot wide and 1 foot deep around the periphery of this house. That's right up next to these rocky foundations. And when we dig that ditch, I'll be able to then tell you what the situation is. Okay, I'll spend $500 just to find out what we got. So he digs this ditch all the way around it, and when he does, he says, "Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Macy," he said, "I can build you a new foundation, and I'll push the mortar." So what he's going to do is he's going to put the foundation down in this ditch, which is beside the foundation, right? And then he'll push the mortar from this foundation into all these rocks. And he says, I'll build you a foundation that'll be better than what they had originally, because you'll have, so, and that's going to cost you $2,000. So I said, oh, she's bugging me. So I said, okay, we'll do it. And we get in the car and we head for Colorado or Santa Fe. We're gone. And when we get inside, you'll see that back on that corner, it was so rotted out that the floors was rotted out, the walls was rotted out, so you really couldn't build a foundation over on that corner over. So he says to me, he says, well, I've got a son-in-law that's a good old carpenter, and he says, I'll have him fix the framing so that I can go ahead and finish the foundation. So we're gone for 10 days, and we come back, and sure enough, he has this foundation all the way around the house. And I'm going to be able to walk you around and show you. It's a neat deal. And he says, Mr. Macy, you got a better foundation now than when originally it was put in. In the meantime, his son-in-law had started some major substructure back in that corner so that they could put the foundation around that side of the house. I guess I can tell you that story. So the son-in-law, I meet him. I really like him. I like him a lot. And I watched him work. I came out every day when I got back from Santa Fe. I watched him working, and his name's Jack. God, I just love him. He is really a good old carpenter. Yep, young guy, 50 years old. And I said, Jack, Frances wants to redo this house. What do you think we can do? And it's August. And he says, well, in 3 months, he said, by Thanksgiving, we ought to be able to fix the house up. And so we made a deal that I was going to pay him $4,000, and in 3 months we'd have it all done, and we didn't know exactly what we were going to do, but we were going to put in new windows. We did say that. And so this house had lath and plaster. Do you know what that is?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know what drywall is?
Yes.
Okay,
No
before drywall, before World War II, which is before drywall, when you build a house, instead of drywall, but to get the equivalency of a wall, like drywall, you took laths, and the laths were like a quarter-inch thick, and maybe an inch and a half wide, and they were long. They were just long laths. You can imagine what that'd be. So you have your 2x4s that's built your walls up, and you put these laths on there, and you have a gap between each lath, and they're just in their angle like this, and then another one angled like this, angled like this, and then you come along and put a screen over it, and now you get putty what's another word for that?
Plaster.
Plaster. You get plaster in a bucket,
Uh-huh.
and you take a spatula, and you just smear it on this screen that's on these. So it's called lath and plaster, and that's the way they built homes back before, say, World War II. All homes to finish the inside wall, so you'd have a finish. Either that, or you put wood plank or whatever. So all these walls was lath and plaster. So we're going along and we're saying, how good's this wall? And you'd touch it, and you could tell it was really loose. And so after a day or two, we said, what we're going to do, we can't do it. So we started tearing this out. So we tore out all the walls inside of the lath and plaster because it was all deteriorated. It was just coming apart. You couldn't have ended up with a finished house. So we tore all that out, and when we did that, our Thanksgiving date went up in smoke. So I made a deal with him. I just pay him so much a week until we get it done. Well, it took us till May.
Wow.
But oh boy, you're gonna like what you see when you go inside.
This would have qualified, all those big long pieces of paper you have to fill out
Uh-huh.
for. It would have qualified for being a historic farmhouse, that, according to the national standards, except that Uncle Russell had covered it years ago because it was just, when you got down to the wood, you would see this was just pieces of old wood from torn down barns up the road. And
Junk.
just pieces of.
Sure.
So it was really not very well put together. So a lot of the outside had deteriorated rapidly, and Uncle Russell had covered it all. Years ago, they used to have those asbestos shingles
Uh-huh.
that they would nail on. And they were wonderful for the time because they were very impervious to
Nobody knew they were
bad weather.
bad for your
But
health.
we didn't know they were going to kill us all, But if we had taken all that off, we would have had the stringent
wouldn't have
guidelines for
how to
disposing
dispose
of
of
it.
Mhm.
We didn't even know what we do, so we decided the best thing is just to give it a raincoat.
So we put a
So-
full new coating on it.
Could have saved the outhouse, the toilet,
Mhm.
which had Uncle Russell's numbers up there. He was in 349 when he went to 349. That was the toilet, and I should have saved it. I don't know why the road
And it had a
didn't save
moon. It had a moon hole on it.
it. I don't know why we didn't save that.
There was a 2-holder too, by the way.
Did they?
So you could go out there and visit with your friends.
Which catalogs did they have out there?
Oh, Sears and Roebuck.
Of
Oh yeah.
course.
Oh yeah. That's true.
And
That's
that old-
exactly right. That's exactly what was there. And you tried to go back to the yellow pages because they were a little more.
Uh-huh.
Not
They
slick.
weren't slick like the.
But the old garage that was over here, Uncle Russell had found someone tearing down an old barn up the way there, and it was just literally an old barn with a gravel driveway going in.
Yeah.
And we tore it down too because it was not usable.
But that old barn was post Grandpa.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
But this other stuff was here back
Uncle Russell.
years ago.
Now the original barn, is it still on the property?
No,
Well,
it burned,
what you're going to see is a barn that is
but it's old.
90 years old. So there was another one there, my mom says, that
Lightning
burned
struck.
down lightning. But that one that's out there is, let's see, I'm born in 1930, and it was an old barn then. So that barn out there is about a 1910 model. So it's 100 years old. We'll show you that
And it
too.
was mostly tin for a while, and they covered it with wood. And, but anyway.
And have you done any restoration on the smokehouse?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now on the smokehouse, this is a funny story. When that smokehouse was built,
You might want to make it short.
They
I think
laid-
they got a timeline.
when that smokehouse was built, the 4 walls was laid on the ground, and they just put a 2x4 frame, and then put 1x8s and 1x6s,
That's how it was when we got
and it was laying
there.
on the ground.
We didn't
And so
even
then
know
they
it.
just swung it up and attached the roof to it. So 10 years ago when we did this, we had to do something. So we're putting a new roof on that. And 2 guys are up there putting the roof on, and it's doing this. That little bit. So they come back down, we look inside, and there's no basic structure for the walls. So So we built a
Yeah,
new
Jack.
structure. So when you go inside it, you'll get to see where we added proper framing and proper structure,
So it would blow over.
and we put in a concrete floor.
Hmm.
When I came here as a little boy, and the stories I was telling you about when Aunt Pete and Uncle Russell milked 18 cows a day, it was just a dirt floor. And at one time, Uncle Russell on this end, on the south end, he had a 50-gallon drum cut half in two, with a shower nozzle on it and a ladder, and he would climb up there and take water and pour in that, and then the sunshine would warm the water up, and that was their, instead of them using a number 2 tub inside, so in the summertime that's where they could take a shower with that.
But they did get a bathroom in about
After World War II, in the 50s, they put a little bathroom back.
And then
But we're
Uncle Russell closed in this porch and made Aunt Pete a little laundry room.
little laundry.
She was so happy to get her own washing machine
Oh,
out
I
there.
bet.
This porch right here. Now, when we get inside, I'll tell you some more. But when we started to redo it, we had a picture, a 1910 picture, and so we made the house look just like it did in 1910. The exterior.
Are you all familiar with Foucart, Foucart? He was a very important architect.
Architect and Guthrie.
And well, not all over Oklahoma.
World.
There are many Foucart buildings all over, and he did the city hall and lots and lots of those beautiful buildings downtown Guthrie
Uh-huh.
are his design. Well, the Logan County Historical Society gives awards each year for 3 or 4 restorations, and we got the Foucart Award for the restoration of a
About
farm
4 years
home.
ago.
So it
Wow.
was a
It is
very
a-
nice award. We've got it over
For this
there.
old house.
Well, on all of your acreage here, have you added any new buildings?
No new buildings.
Yeah, right over there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm thinking she's talking about farm buildings.
No.
We, next door, 3 years ago, we built another house. Instead of having a second house in the Colorado mountains, it's next door. And we'll show you that when you're all done with this part.
We go on Rocky Mountain retreats 18 miles from home.
home.
And our kids come and spend the
You'll be able
night.
to tell when you get over. I mean, we get the sunsets and the sunrises and the moon sizes, the moon sets. It's really pretty over there.
Well, I have to ask how you two met.
I get to tell that story. I'm in the 6th or 7th grade.
Funny.
Hope I can keep a straight face.
I hope you can too. Please do.
Anyway, the bus comes in, and out jumps these kids out of the bus, and she jumps out of the bus, and I see her getting out of the bus,
Holding my little sister's hand.
and that would have been what year would that have been?
Only you know.
I was in the 7th grade, so 7 and 5 is 12, so I would have been 12 or 13 years old, and I'm 80, so that would have been 68 years ago. So that's when I first saw her, and so then we went to school together, and then we went to high school together, and we
Went to
dated.
college
We
together.
dated in high school, and then we went to college together, and we got married in our junior year in college. And I was, we were 19, and she was old enough to get married. You know, a girl is an adult at 18, but men are not adult till they're 21. So I had to get my mother's permission to get married, and we got married 60 years ago this January,
Wow.
1951. So I can't ever remember.
We grew up together, literally.
I can't ever remember being single.
We used to come out here when we were in high school and go down the creek and get Christmas trees. We get a tree for Aunt Pete. We get a tree for his house and my house, and
Cedars. We
Cedars.
go down,
and so we still have a cedar tree at Christmas time. We go on the creek. And
and we go down now. We got grandkids, and we go down now and get a Christmas tree each year and put in the house next door. We'll show you that when we get over there.
you
But
did ask questions about holidays in the olden days.
Right.
Well, we can't tell you how much they did, but when we were growing up, we'd always come out to Aunt Pete's for 4th of July, and they'd make ice cream. That was the big thing.
Homemade ice cream.
But years ago, Phil's mother told about when she was a young girl that one of her cousins played fiddle, and her mother actually had a pump organ in that parlor. And they had rag rugs that they made on the floor. Well, they'd roll up the rag rugs, and they called the fiddle player, and Grandma would get on the pump organ, and they would have dances in that
In
parlor.
this front room with straight.
And they would come out, it was nice weather, they'd come out and dance in the yard under the trees. So, wasn't that a cute story, though? And they'd have lemonade and cookies. I don't know what they called them. My mother went to play parties, so I don't know if that's what they had or not. So
Frances, did you grow up on a farm too?
I did.
Mhm.
Yes.
2 miles right over
Right
here.
here. Mhm. And I didn't have electricity. I didn't have a telephone either, so nobody could call me.
I used to call you.
Well, when we moved on the other side of town,
Yeah,
then we had
when you
but
moved
I
to the
was a
other
junior
farm.
in high school by then, so
Yeah.
I was grown up.
And where did you go to college together?
Central State.
Central State.
Yeah.
Okay.
He got a degree in business, and I got a degree in education, elementary.
Okay.
And then he got in the Navy, and
We
from
graduated.
there we went to California, and then the East Coast, and then
We graduated in 52. She went, I started in 48, she started in 49. She
And I
finished
caught up
in
with
3
her.
years. She went summer, winter, spring, and fall.
Wow.
and worked 100 hours a month
Whew.
in the library.
Yeah.
The library got me through school, girls.
And how many kids do you have?
2 girls.
Okay.
One was Amy that just came here, the blonde, and she's coming to get her horse to take it closer to where the kids are. They live in Edmond, just a block from us, and the horse is too far out here. We can't drive out here every day, and take care of it. So, and then our other daughter, the older daughter, who doesn't have any children, lives in Kansas, and she owns Bartlett Arboretum. I don't know if any of you. It just got
Write that
National
down. You
Historic.
want to go see
Yeah,
that.
you need to look that up.
Hmm.
Look it up on your.
Look it up
computer.
on your computer. Bartlett Arboretum or Robin Macy.
.com.
Either one.
Bartlett
You'll get the whole story.
.com.
When you were thinking about retiring, considering this place, was it first on your list, or did you think of it?
Absolutely not.
Not.
I love St. Louis. Phil loves St. Louis.
We lived in St. Louis 47 years.
Yeah, and all of our friends were there. We'd raised our kids there. Every time I go to the grocery store, I'd have PTO meeting because I'd keep seeing parents of kids that I had in 1st grade, and now they're in college and they're getting married and having kids. I loved it in St. Louis. St. Louis is a beautiful town.
But
It's very historic. But when he retired, and he had 2 or 3 other jobs, and then finally I retired, and I taught 1st grade for 32 years, and he was at McDonnell Douglas for 35 years. So, and then he was Willy Wonka of the chocolate factory. He managed a chocolate factory in St. Louis, and then he was the little old wine man because he ran a winery out on the
2 years on the Missouri River.
on the
Wow.
Missouri River. And then Phil's mother was living by herself. My mother was living by herself in Guthrie. And we were the trustees for this Aunt Pete that used to live
Lived
here.
here.
And she had no children. And one of them was always needing us,
Oh,
So
7
we
times
were
a year we'd drive to St. Louis.
going back and forth. And finally we
Oklahoma.
said, okay, let's move back to Oklahoma. So we sold our house and moved back. And I cried buckets when I left St. Louis.
But we bought this farm years before.
And that was why I kept bugging him, because that was part of the deal. If we move back, we get to do the little house. So
Well, we bought the farm from Aunt Pete and Uncle Russell in 1980.
at the height of the
The price of land was the most expensive it had been. That was back when farms were selling twice what they were worth. But we bought it then, and we spent 10 years paying for it.
Wow.
Every year we'd send money and interest,
but we wanted it paid for before we came back.
and we had it
That
paid
was
for.
our goal. So if we came back. So anyway, that's how we got here. And it was not my first choice, but yeah, it's okay now. And now that Amy and her little kids moved here, we have family here. Close family here. And Robin is just really an hour and a half away.
Yeah, after we moved here, Robin used to live in Texas, and now she lives up in Belle Plaine,
Belle Plaine.
Kansas. She's a school teacher up there.
Well, what does the future hold for the farm? The next 100 years? What do you
We are
envision?
starting. We have already started what I consider traditions, family traditions, because we had to start from scratch, of course, because we weren't family before here. every 4th of July, we have a celebration to celebrate the birthday of our country. And we started out kind of little, but we did, Phil does he's the ringleader, and we do old-fashioned games, like toss the egg and gunny sack
races,
parades, and we have no fireworks. We can't stand to have fireworks. I get too much of a fire hazard. For one thing, plus the fact I can't stand them. And anyway, we do and then we all eat. We have a big barbecue. And this past year, for the first time, and we'll keep that up because it was so much fun. No, this was the second time, wasn't it? Yeah, this is the second time. We march in the Crescent 4th of July parade.
Little town.
And we made great big bluebirds, and we carried these big bluebirds.
This is Bluebird Farm, and this time we had 30. Was it 30? I think we
At
had
least
30
in the parade.
people in the parade.
But we end up.
That comes to the party, and we have a big 4th of July party out here.
It's getting bigger. It's 60 or 70, and
Well, each one of the girls invite their friends.
and
Welcome.
you can come. You're welcome to come.
So now you guys you got official.
We'll see you the 4th of July.
4th of
You know how to
July.
get here.
You'll have a big time.
And our girls are both very good musicians, professional musicians, in addition to their day job. But this is the picking porch over there, and we have lots of music in the evenings. So.
Now,
Any other family traditions that you've started, or
Well, let's see, what else?
you try to keep on? What's going to happen to the farm?
oh, you
Down
asked
the
that.
road.
Yeah, you asked that. a
You
while
did
ago.
ask that in your questionnaire. We're just hoping that the little girls, our girls, love the farm. Both of them do. They both like to live here. In fact, Amy has talked many, many times about building them a house out here, but school is such a problem out here. She teaches online for the University of Tennessee in Murfreesboro, so she could do it here. But his job is in Edmond, and the school for little kids is just so difficult because you have to drive
Right.
them. There's no bus or drive them in. And they're into all kinds of activities that are available close by. So I don't know. We're hoping that the little girls they love this place, and we're hoping that the little girls will like it.
I think
too.
there's a question mark to her question.
Oh yeah, we
You
know
do
that.
not know what
We don't know
your
what's
offsprings
We're just hoping.
or your grandkids are.
Oh,
if
who knows? They may
if they
sell
take a liking to it, then it could be here, 50, 100 years from now.
Or they could sell it.
We haven't any idea, but
Who knows?
it's all paid for. So it's everything we did was cash. We didn't have the money. We didn't do it, and so that's the status of it. But we don't really know.
We don't know. But neither did Joella and Alfred.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
see, Joella and Alfred,
They
when they started, in fact, if they could only,
We sit here and sometimes sit on the porch and say, wonder what Joella and Alfred would say about this place if they were sitting here now. They'd probably say, my God, what'd they do?
Or they may be proud.
Or they might love it.
you never
Uh-huh.
know.
We think Aunt Pete would love it, if she were here. And Uncle Russell, they had such a hard life. Think of 40 years milking
See,
those cows day and
Bef-
night.
Before we
In the
came
garden.
here,
Uh.
they didn't have lawnmowers and stuff. So when
This
they
would just
mowed,
be
Uncle Russell would have a horse, or Grandpa would have a horse. Or have you ever seen a sickle? It's got a big long blade and it goes down like this, and it goes back and forth like this, and it's 6 feet long.
Mhm.
That's the way they mowed the yard. Well, you can imagine it didn't look like this. I'm talking about the yard, and so if they saw it today, they'd go, "Good Lord, how'd you get this looking so nice?"
Well, is there anything else you want to share with us today before we go in that we haven't asked you about?
Well,
I don't
it
know.
might come up as we walk through. Can you
Okay.
write and walk at the same time?
We could be, but we won't be recorded.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Yeah.
So is there anything you want to mention? We'll be taking photographs.
Well, let me see. I'll show you stuff inside, and I'll tell you a little about it here. And that is, I'm going to show you some pictures in there. In northern Oklahoma, I think around Pawnee, there was a Miller Ranch. That they called it the 101 Ranch. Have you heard about that?
Yes.
Okay. Every fall, the 101 Ranch, back in the teens and 20s and 30s, had a reunion and a roundup. Grandpa would go. And inside, when we get inside there, I've got two different sets of pictures of 19, 21, and 22 of all of that reunion, 20, 50, 100 guys all in a row. And Will Rogers would go. And so we've got pictures in there of Will Rogers and Grandpa. Will Rogers is sitting here, and Grandpa is standing right behind him. So that's a fine little story that they used to do back in the 20s, and back in those years. Will Rogers was the neatest guy in the world. So anyway, he was part of our picture resume.
Well, another thing, we did preserve as much as we could in the house. This is the original door that was to this porch. It's original.
That's 120 years old.
But it was protected because it's kind of back
in that corner. Everything else rotted out.
Wow.
And this we had to get a different door for this because the original doors were real narrow. But we have the original threshold. The kitchen was Aunt Pete, so it's old. The kitchen cabinets are very old. I had to get it down.
Pre World War II.
And the broom closet, Phil and Jack had out on the burn pile. And I said, go get that broom closet, bring it back in here. It goes in this kitchen. So they brought it back, and you want that old thing? Yeah, I want that.
It'd be 100 years old. The floors are original.
Yeah.
When we get inside, you're going to see original floors. You'll see the trim is original. Oh, that's good. I'm glad I remembered that. In one of your questionnaires, it was about where does the wood come from.
Right.
Okay, inside there, this house, the original house was built probably 1890. Uncle and Grandpa added this addition in probably 1901. The wood, whenever we took all the trim down, and when you see the trim, you'll see it's a big, wide trim, very fancy wood trim in there. When we took the wood all down and took 100 years worth of paint off of it, because it was blue, green, yellow, white, every color in the world had been painted, and we scraped all that off. But on the back side of those big pieces of wood is Mulhall Lumber Company, and it was started in 1889 when they had the first run.
Something?
So a lot of the original wood came from Mulhall, and you know where Mulhall is between here and Stillwater. Of course, Mulhall is this tiny little bird now. But anyway, that's where a lot of the wood come, and maybe where all of it came from. I can't, but we do know the first part of the house. It's actually got their names on the back of it, on the back of the wood.
And did you discover that within the restoration process?
Yes. Oh yeah. No, we would not have known that except when we pulled off all the trim and we're putting in new drywall and taking out the lath and plaster. When those planks came out, they were just, there were 20 or 30 of them out here, and I spent days scraping off that old paint. And when I turned them over, here's Mulhall Lumber Company on the back side of it. That was just.
Phil's mother would share many memories. She died at the age of 104 just recently. Yeah, I've got some pictures over in the other house. I'll show you of her. We had a celebration for the 100th birthday, and it was our 50th anniversary, so we called it the Centennial Party. But anyway, I'll share some memories that Phil's mother had. She remembers sitting on this little porch here when she was a little girl and looking at that arbor. But she swears, and I kind of believe she's probably right. She swears this porch was higher because her feet would dangle down long, because a little girl here, her feet wouldn't dangle. So we think probably the dirt has blown in.
The ground could have been
it
lower.
covered up all these rocks,
100 years
and they were
ago.
12 inches in below the ground.
Yeah.
She remembers sitting on the front porch and watching the sunset and wishing she had a dress that color, whatever it was. And then she remembers the roses and the flowers that her dad, not her mom, her dad, would plant and leading out to the mailbox from the front door.
This was a little paradise even back in 1910.
So
He was a very
my
special.
goal with the yard and the gardens was to try to replicate something that he might have tried to do, in his spare time. I know he didn't have much time with flowers, but then in those days neighbors would share seed, and if they had an extra cutting of a daylily or something or a root, they would share that, So I do share with various neighbors, but I couldn't do it all because it's too much to try to
When
find
we-
enough neighbors with that many things to share.
When we get inside, I'm going to think of more things to
Okay,
give you, and you can't record it, but that's okay.
that's okay, and we could make additions within the transcript.
Yeah,
so.
you can do it as you see fit.
Sure.
In the cellar, Phil will want to show you the cellar.
Okay.
We do have a storm shelter in the other house because I really didn't want to run over there and get in that dark cellar. But
My mother, that's a good story. My mother said when she was a little girl, when the storms would come, Alfred and Joella, Grandpa and Grandpa, they'd take all the family down in the cellar and they'd go to sleep. The kids would. And then when the storm blew over, well, Grandma and Grandpa would come back and
go to bed.
And she'd wake up the next morning. She said, I can't tell you how many times I have awakened in the morning and I'm down there in the cellar with the other two kids. There's two others then. I'll open it up and let you see it.
Wonderful.
And it looks just like it did 110 years ago.
We probably just bored you to death.
Oh no, not it's fascinating. Actually, what we're gonna do is wrap it up. Phil and Frances, thank you so much for sharing your stories of your family and your farm with us, and we look forward to taking the tour and taking some photographs. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're so welcome.